Hello YouTube, welcome to the Loop Line. Today we will be looking at how train operations generally work, specifically with regard to station track layouts. We will look at the different duties that a station usually performs, what infrastructure is provided for this purpose, and what it means for the different trains going through there. We shall look at the basic principles governing such track design and the advantages and disadvantages of certain station layouts. We will look at several station layouts and get an idea of how they are used. Of course, I will be giving you my opinion on each of these layouts and how to improve them if necessary. Quick glossary moment before we start, let me explain a few terms that you need to know. Loop line or passing loop refers to a stretch of track that runs past an existing track for a small distance, usually slightly longer than the longest permitted train length. Alternatively, the term main line is used to refer to this track that continues running as is. Lastly, this thing. It allows trains to switch between tracks. It is known by many names, including switches, points, crossovers, or if you want to be technical, turnouts. I will mostly be saying switches or crossovers in this video, so you don't need to bother with the other names. If you're confused at any time, just come back to this part to see what these are. I should also mention that I won't be extensively covering freight in this video. Aside from being a smaller operation than passenger trains, the track layouts required for them are quite similar. I will also be talking about normal stations and not junctions. Junction stations introduce a level of complexity that is beyond the scope for today. Lastly, I should mention the term interlocking. This is a catch-all term which is used to represent any stretch of track with a significant amount of track switches in them. This term comes from the fact that the switches are interlocked, as in the signaling system is set up such that trains with conflicting routes cannot be permitted to enter the interlocking at the same time. This was initially done using mechanical grooves, but is currently done electronically. Since signal boxes were set up near these areas with large number of switches, they came to be known as interlockings. So, with prerequisites out of the way, let's get going. Broadly speaking, from the perspective of trains, a train station would need to do three primary duties. First, stop and go. This refers to a train coming into a station, stopping to drop off and board passengers, then leaving within a couple of minutes. The second is reversal. For the purposes of this video, reversal is used as a common term for when a train reverses direction mid-route or when a train ends its journey and is shunted into a yard. The last one is skipping, where the train runs through the station without stopping at it, preferably at full line speed. For the purposes of this video, I will be omitting yard tracks and freight sidings from most track diagrams. I should also mention that this video is not a detailed rundown on track layouts and switches. This is a complex topic with a lot of technical details, and this is my attempt at simplifying this for a general audience. I'm not a professional, I just make these videos to spread awareness. Without further ado, let's look at these duties one by one and see how they are handled. First up, stop and go. This is fairly straightforward. It refers to a train coming into a station, stopping, and leaving in a few minutes. This duty requires at least one track with a platform attached to it. In addition, the platform must be able to handle the train's requirements. For instance, the platform has to be long enough to accommodate a full train, though there are exceptions to this, and in case of suburban trains, high floor platforms are required since they don't have stairs to board it from the ground. One job that is adjacent to this is the passing loop job that only exists on single track lines. Because trains running in both directions share a single track, the station has to be able to allow two trains to pass each other. A station which does this looks something like this, with multiple tracks that converge into a single line at both ends. In many cases, the main line itself could have a platform attached to it, though it's best not to have one. I'll not be discussing single track layouts much since they are, by nature, quite boring. If you want to see how you would timetable trains on a layout like this, you can watch this video here. The next job for a station is skipping. This generally requires no additional infrastructure. A train can skip a station on the main line itself, regardless of whether it has a platform or not. When this job gets interesting is when you want a station to do two things at once. As an example, letting an express train overtake a stopping train. This requires an extra track position next to the main line, which we will look at when we see basic station layouts. This is a loop line. The last category here is reversal. This involves the train coming into a station and leaving back the way it came. This is done either with the locomotive running around a train or with a different locomotive to pull it in another direction. Either way, this job generally requires one or two extra tracks and a crossover between the two running lines on the main line. This will allow a train to come into the station, turn around, and leave on the correct track. If you are reversing an EMU here, you just need one track with the platform instead of two, and the reversal can be done quite quickly since there is no locomotive to run around. Now that we have our basic functions, let's look at some station layouts and see how they work. This is the simplest type of station you can have. It involves a double track line with platforms on either side or in between the tracks. It allows trains to stop and go and skip past as well, but you cannot overtake a train here. Because there are no crossovers, it is also not possible to terminate a train here. There are lots of stations with this station layout, mostly on suburban networks. This is practical because boarding passengers will know which track the train will arrive on, since there is no option here to use another platform. Outside suburban networks, this is generally used for very small stations that see little use. Or it may be used for stations where land is restricted and there is not enough space to build loop lines. Now let's add an extra track with the platform. In this example, the two main lines run on the outside while an extra track is positioned in the middle, with switches to access both main lines present at either end. This is quite useful when you want to terminate a train in the middle platform. A train can come in, the loco run around, and go back the way it came. If you are terminating an EMU here, it allows this to be done without blocking either track of the main line. It should also be noted that this third track can be used as an overtaking loop in both directions, though you can only do this in one direction at a time. Examples of this include Tirutani station near Chennai and Ambarnath station near Mumbai, both of which are used to turn around suburban trains. Station layouts get very interesting when you expand beyond this. What if we have two passing loops? This gives us, in my opinion, the most flexible station design on a double track line. We have two main lines with each main line having an overtaking loop next to it. Depending on the station, there might be crossovers at one or both ends, allowing trains to terminate. There is also huge flexibility in terms of platform arrangement. Since there are four tracks here, any of them may have platforms. Generally, at least two of the tracks have platforms, although more of the tracks may have it as well. The reason this layout has huge flexibility has mostly to do with freight. Let me explain. Since freight trains have lower priority than passenger services, they are generally made to wait at such loop lines to allow passenger trains to pass. However, when a freight train is occupying a track, there is only one track available for use in that direction. Having a platform on this main line can allow a stopping passenger train to overtake as well as an express to run past. Of course, this will mean that when this freight train is here, an express passenger train cannot overtake a local since the loop line is occupied by a freight train. Depending on the station, it might be possible to access both loop lines from both tracks, which increases flexibility even further. It is occasionally possible to see more than two loop lines as well, which increases capacity by letting trains overtake while a freight train is sitting at the station. But there is really no need to think about it that deeply. Stations that feature this track layout are numerous. Sulurpeta, Morapur, Muradnagar, Kadur Junction, Bardoli, Hadapsar are all stations that follow this layout. I have noticed that a lot of these tend to have the express lines run through the middle with the loop lines on either side, which have the platforms. So, when a freight train has to wait, they actually let it wait on the main line, letting our passenger trains run through the loop. I think this practice is a bad idea because any train going through the loop line will have to slow down to use the turning side of these switches, which most of the time are limited to 30 kilometers per hour. This can waste anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes on an express train's timetable. The best layout would be something like Lalgudi or Hejjal, both of which have platforms on all four tracks, making them very flexible. That about sums it up for what you can do with two tracks. But what happens if you add more? Once you have more than two tracks, the station layouts greatly depend on how the tracks are used. The most common way that triple track is operated is, well, they make it up. Since you can't split trains into two directions evenly here, triple track is the most difficult to handle operationally. Thus, track use highly depends on local conditions and train traffic in the area. Going from three tracks to four will net close to doubling in rail capacity compared to going from two tracks to three, which is why I don't particularly like the idea of triple track. If you watch my clockfish scheduling video, you would know that I propose the following arrangement for triple track use. One track will be set aside for local operations. Stations along the route will have passing loops to allow trains to cross each other on this single track. Meanwhile, express trains will run past on the other two lines. However, that does not mean passing loops will not be required. Freight trains will still have to give way, and thus passing loops at small stations for them is necessary. While freight train can be sent on the local track, this creates delays to local trains and the freight train would have to stop many more times, something that is best avoided. By my calculations, on the express line, a freight train going 90 kilometers per hour would have to stop approximately every 1 hour to give way to a passenger train, compared with every 20 minutes on the local line. So, if you don't know how the line will be operated, how do you design a track layout for such a station? Simple. You set up switches on both sides of the station that let any train access any platform. This allows the signalers to decide how the station will be used based on local conditions and where the trains are. These anywhere to anywhere interlockings are most commonly used at approaches to major terminus and junction stations, allowing any train to access any platform. While this increases flexibility, it also generally increases cost, and these interlockings tend to have lower capacity than more focused point work aimed at specific operating patterns. With all that out of the way, welcome to the most interesting part of the video. The design of a station on a quadruple track railway is heavily influenced by how the quad track line is used. Broadly speaking, a line with four tracks will have two tracks dedicated to express service and the other two for a local service. Technically, you can have literally any track be express or local, but broadly speaking, there are two arrangements used. The first one is called directional running. Here, the outer two tracks are used by local trains and the inner two tracks are for expresses or vice versa. The other way of doing this is line running, where two tracks on one side are for express service while the other two are locals. This is the arrangement most commonly seen in India, especially on suburban networks. As an example, in Chennai, the section of line from Tambaram to Chennai Egmore is exactly this arrangement. This pair on the west side is for locals, while the other pair is for express service. In Mumbai, this arrangement is taken one step further. At Masjid station near Mumbai CSMT, there are actually six parallel tracks. The way this works is that these two tracks are for the harbour line towards Panvel, the next two are for the central line towards Thane, the last two are used by express trains. You should also note that fast local trains usually share tracks with expresses. Now, when it comes to station design, it all comes down to how many levels of express service are offered. For example, the slowest trains on these lines tend to be suburban services. The next slowest are fast locals, followed by freight movements and then express passenger trains. Technically speaking, it is possible to operate all four of these using a quad track line with reasonable capacity. We already looked at how you can operate trains with different average speeds on a double track line. We use passing loops to let trains overtake each other. On a quad track line, however, you can treat it as two sets of double track lines to get some interesting station layouts. For example, Tirunendravoor station on Chennai Suburban Railway is built like this. It has two express tracks, but the local tracks have passing loops on which the platforms are built. This allows a variety of train movements. You can run fast suburbans and make them overtake locals here, or you can run freight trains on the local line and have them overtake suburban trains here. All this can be done without disturbing express passenger movements which are contained in this pair. You can also be more creative and use the local lines as passing loops for the express tracks. For example, you can have a train on the express tracks switch to the local to let an express overtake, then switch back to the express. The point I'm trying to make is that the sky is the limit if you're creative enough. You can make pretty much anything work so long as you know how to use passing loops, extra tracks, and switches. I should also mention that taking best advantage of existing track layouts is all down to the talent and skill of signalers. One weird practice that I've seen Indian Railways do many times is park a freight train on the main line at a station, which I alluded to earlier. The reason for this is that it allows a stopping train to run past on the loop line, especially when the mainline tracks don't have platforms. I've seen this happen several times and it's kind of annoying when you're in an express train and you're sent on the loop line, especially since accessing a loop line generally involves traversing this switch right here. And in most places, this switch is limited to 30 kilometers per hour. Sometimes it's 15. This means that any train accessing a loop line has to be limited to that speed whenever any part of the train falls within the loop. Now that we've gone over how you go about looking at a station layout, I am going to walk you through several real stations and giving you my opinion on the track layouts. You should note that most of these require some level of local knowledge to understand and judge how good they are. Kannur station has four platforms numbered 1, 2, 3, and 1A. It should really be called platform 0 in my opinion. Anyway, platforms 1 and 3 are the running lines and platform 2 is a loop line common to both. Platform 1A is a dead end platform used to terminate trains only. I think the station has a pretty good layout. Most trains that pass through the station also stop here. So it makes sense to have platforms on all running lines through the station. Platform 2 is a common loop line, so it's useful to have a local wait here and let an express train run past, though you can only do this in one direction at a time. However, if a northbound local train terminates at Kannur, you can run it into platform 1A and have the express run past on platform 2. Sollurpeta is the northernmost terminus for Chennai Suburban Railway, and the station has three platforms. These are the two running lines, and there are loop lines for both tracks here. This loop line allows trains going north to overtake stopping trains if necessary, and this main line doesn't have a platform. For going south, however, since the station receives a large number of suburban trains, they all reverse at platform 3. Since there is a good chance that platform may be occupied by a suburban train when a stopping passenger train arrives, there is a platform here on the main line as well. There is a crossover just beyond the station which the suburban trains use to reverse direction. This station layout is also pretty good as it does a good job of letting suburban EMUs terminate while letting express trains use the station on both sides. Manasarovar is a station on the harbour line of the Mumbai suburban network located in Navi Mumbai. I am not spotlighting this station because it has some track layout complications. In fact, it's very simple. But I'm spotlighting this for the platform layout. You see, every station on the suburban network in Navi Mumbai was built with platforms on both sides of the track, and this is the simplest version of that arrangement. Commonly called Spanish solution platforms, this platform arrangement represents the most efficient station layout on a metro style service. The way this works is that people boarding the train will wait on the outer platforms while people getting off the train get off on the inner platform. This reduces passenger confusion and there is no conflict between people getting on or off the train. I'm not saying this happens exactly in Navi Mumbai, but that's how these stations are designed to be used. At peak, a station like this can clear a 12 coach suburban train in just about 15 seconds, even if large numbers of people are getting on or off the train. The last station I will discuss today is Krishnarajapuram. Located towards the eastern side of Bengaluru, KR train station has 4 platforms, but there are actually 5 tracks here. The main line through here is currently double track, and on the west side, it splits into 2 additional tracks, with another track on the north side. This creates our 5 tracks. From bottom to top, tracks 1, 2, 3, and 5 all have platforms, and the platforms are numbered 1 to 4. These tracks then recombine back into the 2 tracks on the eastern side, and there is one extra track here towards the north that is used to access KR diesel locomotive shed. There are crossovers on both sides of the station that allow access into this shed. This extra track without a platform here is generally used to park a freight train until the line ahead is free. The fact that this station has 4 platforms is a reminder that this is quite a busy station, with several express trains stopping here. Now you might have noticed this extra piece of track in all the diagrams I've used so far. It's located just before a loop line rejoins the main and serves 2 purposes. The first one is safety. Whenever a train is required to overtake another train, you need to make sure that the train on the loop line does not interfere with the train that runs express, since this will result in a high speed collision. This track allows a train a place to go if it fails to stop within signal limits. The points here are set to this track by default unless a route is set for a train to depart from the loop line. The second purpose of this track is future proofing. If the number of tracks on this section of line is to be increased, these points provide a convenient place from which to extend. This has come in handy in several places, including here at KR. The Whitefield to Bengaluru cantonment section of railway is currently undergoing a project to add 2 additional tracks, making this route a quad track line. Thus, the current loop line platforms will end up becoming 2 extra main lines here. Of course, given this extra track here, there are other ways to connect the 2 new main lines, and the presence of the locomotive shed also complicates matters. I'm just showing you a possible track layout here. That about concludes this video on track layouts. In having said all this, there is a question that needs to be answered. What use is there for a regular passenger to know all this? Well, outside curiosity, not much, but I can think of a few scenarios where it may help. For instance, if you know the track layouts, you may know which side of the train your platform will be on even before the train has reached the station. For example, if you're going east at Ottaipalam station, your platform will always be on the left as there is no access to platform 2. Similarly, if you're at a station waiting for your train, the track layout is an easy way to identify what platform your train will arrive on, well before any official announcement is made. If you're trying to make a tight connection between two trains, knowing the track layout and the path for both trains can also help you figure out if that connection is guaranteed or not. I realize that most of these things require additional knowledge to understand. Train reversal points, electrification boundaries, station footpath locations all play a part here. But track layouts are the hardest nuts to crack, since everything else can also be learned from observation and experience. I hope I've explained certain train movements and how station platforms are assigned. The next time you take a train, take a moment to understand the track layout of whichever station you're going to, or at the very least, look out the window to see what the tracks are doing. That's it from me today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next loop line.
பயணிகளின் கனிவான கவனத்திற்கு வண்டி எண் 2225 கன்னியாகுமரி இருந்து ராணிகுண்டா நெல்லூர் விஜயவாடா ராஜமன்றி வயா திப்ருகர் வரை செல்லும் விவேக் எக்ஸ்பிரஸ் நடைமேடை 3 இன்னும் சற்று நேரத்தில்